Welcome everybody, I'm Santiago Kneeland, and this is The Divine Within, the invisible connection with God. Today we're joined by Susan Lyon, artist, author, poet, and a lifelong seeker of truth. Her spiritual journey began nearly 5 decades ago, shaped by motherhood and a profound search for meaning. Together, we'll explore the heavenly government and its reflection on earth, asking, are our systems of power purely human inventions or imperfect echoes of divine design? From celestial administration to earthly politics, history, and even Star Wars, we'll uncover how divine order weaves through the story of civilization and what it reveals about our spiritual destiny. Once we start to understand the structures of how things are on the earth, and many times they are reflections of what's happening in heaven, then we kind of start to understand how the evolution, I think that's the most important part, how we are evolving from being imperfect to a little bit, sometimes a little bit more struggle, sometimes not that much, but nonetheless, it's a forward evolution into becoming more heavenly like, in a way we're perfecting ourselves individually, but at the same time there's a whole process, as a whole, as a humanity, and even as a universal family, that we evolve as well. So what can you tell us about this first topic that we're going to be talking about, which is the heavenly ideal? In the universe, government is not a chaos. It's harmony guided by divine law. The celestial model balances justice, mercy, and wisdom through a sacred order that mirrors the executive, legislative, and judicial functions we see on earth. But unlike our imperfect systems, these heavenly structures are transparent, participatory, and anchored in love, reminding us that governance could be if we aligned it with spiritual truth. So what can you tell us about that, Susan?
Well, it's interesting that the heavenly ideal is perfect. There's no chaos and all of that. But actually, that is over time. We live in time, space, universe, and all of that works its way out in time. But we're actually living right in the middle of chaos right now that eventually will be gone. But right now, we're actually living lives that are affected by our environment. And we are actually living on a battlefield, a spiritual battlefield right now, where our planetary prince was involved in rebellion, and it has affected all of our lives since then. And we're also suffering from a little bit of confusion and lack of information, which we're hoping to shed some light on in this podcast, right?
Yeah. And this is, I mean, you just mentioned something that a lot of people are living through, and it's chaos. And many times we can kind of feel despair and feel lost in that chaos. But once you see this in the grand perspective, and like you're saying, we live in the universes of time and space. So there is time, that moves us forward. And we weren't created in perfection, like the divine realms or the heavenly realms, sorry, are, perfect. We are trying to mirror them, and that's a progress. But um, what can you tell us about especially when we hear about the spiritual chaos and the situation that we're living in? Why do you believe we're in this situation? And well, I mean, let's set the stage here, and then we'll dive a little bit more into how the celestial government is structured. But let's talk a little bit about the times that we're living. Why do you think, in the universal context of time and space, why are we going through chaos? Why is this moment so clearly uh, defined? Everybody can pinpoint that there's chaos.
I think everybody's confused right now, and that's creating the chaos between misinformation, lack of information, and honestly, a separation from the spirit that really would guide us if we would just allow it to and engage with the spirit of truth. Jesus' spirit is very powerful. He poured it out upon all flesh. And if we would just allow that spirit to lead us through, I think it would help for us to discern truth and find our way through all of these problems. And part of that is playing out over time so that we have the chance to do that. In the heavenly realms, they wish they had the chance to prove themselves, like we're getting the opportunity to do. So it's the grass is always greener. We wish we were perfect. We will be in eternity in time, but they wish they had the chance to prove themselves in this exciting adventure. Really is what it is, of us being victorious over rebellion.
This is interesting what you're saying. These, I mean, the celestial realms, like you're saying, they were perfect, and that's our model that we're following. So, in a way, you're saying that they wish they were here. You know, we wish that we were perfect, and you're saying that they wish they were here and they had the chance to live through these process. And what I can understand, and this is my understanding of it, is God is also. I mean, when we're one of the qualities of God is we're perfecting ourselves, and God is living that experience. You know, that's the way that the heavenly realms live or experience. I think is through us. You know, they experience what we go through. Even Jesus came and became, you know, mortal flesh to live that experience. So how important it is, you know, because sometimes we see ourselves as maybe unimportant or unconsequential in the story of the universe. But how important this is, you know, that we are, you know, feeding into the what God the Supreme is going to be. And maybe later we can explain a little bit more of what God the Supreme is.
Right? The courage that we show right now is the attention of the universe. We are prime time news on this planet right now. We're struggling with, I think, probably what is the final days of this rebellion. Because really, when you think about it, the world, a lot of people believe that the world is still full of demons, when really there are only two left: the planetary prince that was fallen and his assistant. They're nothing but influencers now. And so,
Okay.
really, the only problem we have are people being confused and being led into, evil, basically. So, where there's a lot of fear of supernatural evil, there really doesn't need to be. We have no reason to fear them because we're protected by Jesus and his spirit of truth. But the whole world is watching as we sort this out. And we have the power as human beings on this planet, I believe, to say, we don't want that anymore. This is our world. This actually, Jesus owns the title to this planet as planetary prince right now. And he's allowing us the chance to reclaim that for him, to say, we don't want any more evil. We want those guys out of here. And there is a legal process in heaven going on to try them, but we could also have them removed from this planet if there were no more sympathy for them, because that's part of the free will process. God allows this all to play out because there is some sympathy left for the evildoers, evidently, on the world, or they would be gone already. So all we have to say is, get everybody on board and say, we're going to live the will of God. We're going to follow those ways, and they would be gone. They would be apprehended and taken out of here. And
And further on in the because there's a very specific segment in what the current situation is on Earth, but right now I want to talk about the structure of heaven. You know, and this is very interesting. And one of the things that I understood, you know, at one point is because I saw that, you know, through time in history we came to the, you know, the Enlightenment and these great eras where we had these great ideas of democracy and you know, the separation of powers, and we separated the, you know, the executive, legislative, and judicial. But, you know, I started reading that this is really the model of heaven. It's not something that was here or that we came up with as human beings, but, you know, the circuits, because I mean, it's our minds are, you know, we're all connected, you know, it connects to big, let's say, like a circuit, you know, it's all within the circuits. And through these circuits, these mind circuits, is that we, let's put it in colloquial terms, we download the information and we make these connections. And how important to, because that's interesting. Sometimes, you know, there's a thought in this part of the world and then this part of the world, and suddenly, you know, it's these connections, and then, you know, through time and evolution, we start bringing all this information down, and how we were able to uh, create these celestial attempts at that. No, so I don't know if you can tell us a little bit more of how the structures in heaven are. You know, how the celestial government is really structured.
well, obviously the deities are the executive the executive branch, and they set the standard of
And who are the deities?
the Father in heaven. We could call him the universal Father from everywhere, not just
Hmm.
our world, but everywhere. And the eternal Son and the
Mm.
infinite Spirit
The
and
Trinity.
Trinity. Yeah. And so
Those
that
are the deities and they're the executives, right?
yeah, they really are. And they set up they have creature beings that they've created that come out into the universe and help us.
And execute, it's like the governors, right? The governors and then the mayors, and there's a whole, tier system that is also operating throughout the universe, right?
And so we know actually one of them personally who came here and incarnated for personal experience as Jesus.
Exactly.
So we
Exactly.
know him personally. So, and he told us, when you've seen me, you've seen the Father. So through him, we know the nature of God the Father as
And
well.
that is so particular to us, and especially in this case, we were the selected among a lot of planets to be the lucky ones to receive him. So that is really something very special to us. Now, tell us about the legislative branch of this celestial government.
Well, and I think that that is more closely tied to the more local part of our universe. Wherever we live, we have, the larger systems that we belong to. And those legislative branches are all representative government from all of the worlds. It's sort of like what we've seen here on Earth as we've attempted
They're
to.
like judges, right?
Well, the ancients of days are
Okay.
that is our judicial, basically. So the ancients of days have been set up by the Trinity. They're ancient beings. They also have all of the resources they know to judge what is true and what isn't. They have advocates that would advocate for us, just like we would do in court here.
Yeah.
But there's a system of integrity there that you can count on. That is wonderful because,
Yeah, that's the difference there.
right, we want a judge to be, to have integrity, to also be all knowing basically and know all of the facts and that we can trust we're going to have a fair hearing
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
we go.
Yeah. And what about the legislative? Because this is tricky. It's like, okay, so does God set the rules? How does that work? Or is it also the God, I mean the Father and the Trinity, the deities?
I think that there's separate branches of government, and honestly, the created beings that are attempting to participate in the legislative branch to actually create law for the local part of the universe.
Okay.
And I believe it would be different, maybe in different parts of the universe, but they would all probably be shooting for the same ideal, you would imagine. But that maybe some of the older parts of the universe, maybe, we're in the newer part of the universe, maybe we're not quite up to their, speed of laws and all of that yet, but we will be someday. But it would be, I would think, representative of what is actually going on in the universe where you're living. What are the problems at that times and the laws that
Yeah. What
is
is what are the laws? And this is, I mean, because we see that the legislation is always evolving. It's not that we set the Constitution because the Constitution got amended right away, right? So,
right,
and that's the beauty about the how you write the law and how you make these. And it's not only the law; it's the policies of how we interact. Because it's not just you have to do this and it binds you, but it's really how everything works in harmony. So I think that, like any government, it represents the people, of and the situation, because it's not the same thing of different parts of the world. It's different needs, different yeah, backgrounds even. So this is very interesting. So in a way, we can see how we bring this into our imperfect world, and it's a lot of flaws. And maybe somebody that looks at this and says, "Yeah, but these systems are not perfect." Yeah, they're not perfect because they're being executed by humans, which are imperfect beings. But if we look at the heavens and how they're executed over there, that's our model to follow. And that's really interesting because just as Jesus was our model here on earth to be, in line and under the divine presence of God and with communion in God, we can also look at these celestial structures and we can read about them actually and understand further about them. I mean, we have resources here. You can check our links. There's different, it doesn't have to be just text. We have a lot of resources that include audio. that you can read about this. It's not only philosophy, it's not only theology, it's also government that you can find out in these sources that we have. So take a look at them and see if it makes sense, because that's the point. You have to discern what you see, what you hear, and if it makes sense, you can see how it applies to our daily lives, right?
Right, exactly. And I think that the ideal is self-government, but as we've seen, we evolve toward that. We don't start out being that way. So in the future ages, we will get to a place where everyone is respectful of others' rights and their existence. They don't overstep their bounds into someone else's rights. But for now, we need laws and government to kind of keep us safe.
Yeah, under control. Well, no, and
Right.
just as I was saying it, it's like a paradox, because we don't want to be under control, but we do need structures, and although they're badly executed many times, it has to come in place in order for us to not kill each other in at these stages, right?
Exactly. I mean, I think I mean, you're in Spain right now, but I'm in the United States. But if you look back at our founding fathers when they established government here, it was a union of states that was trying to create a protection for all, because if they were attacked in one state, they couldn't handle it by themselves. So it was meant to protect from out without and within from tyranny. And honestly, our Constitution is written in Article 5 to actually allow the people to take control back of the government if there is tyranny.
Yeah, yeah,
And
and we're
so
gonna. Yeah,
there's
yeah. Tell me.
and as well, as we've seen, we're in the middle of that.
Here on Earth, the story is very different than in the heavenly realms. We have fragmented nations, political division, and spiritual disconnection, and remnants of an ancient rebellion that fractured our planetary unity. Yet, through the guidance of celestial overseers and the living presence of the Spirit of Truth, humanity continues inching toward a higher form of collective wisdom and divine cooperation. So, with these words that I'm saying, I mean, we're kind of summarizing what we've been talking and what we're going to be talking more about. Is what is the situation, and what celestial oversight are we having? That's very important, because sometimes we feel alone and far away. But what is here, Susan, and what's you talked about the bad actors, but what are the good actors, and how are they interacting with, in between them as well?
Well, a lot of people that have a Bible background might recognize the Most High rules in the governments of men. And so from the very beginning, we know that there is intercession on our behalf in the governments of men. And we're told that there are groups of angels. The angels of the trumpets are supposed to be the angels of the nations. So we have this behind the scenes invisible government working toward the heavenly ideal for us, using people that maybe not, don't even realize they're being influenced by their angels, by their indwelling Spirit of God, by the Spirit of truth, which is Jesus, which works with us, to do certain things that might make a small difference in one person, might make a small difference, but collectively, maybe we're all making a bigger difference to bring us along to that heavenly ideal in different countries as well, because not all countries in this planet are up to a representative government. Some are still living in a tribal state. So we also have that as a problem. We're not all up to the same evolution of government as well. But we're all attempting to get along, and I think we're doing a pretty good job of it actually under the circumstances.
What you're saying is that really there is celestial oversight in different ways, and they're interacting with us. So it's not just behind the scenes, but we're kind of working together. And sometimes I think I feel, presence, and when you're really inspired, and when you're doing good, and you feel that connection. But tell us, or let me, I mean, how do you see? And this is maybe through an evolution, or like if we put it in the context of history. Let's go to prehistory, ancient history. Let's say we had a government. We were in an evolutionary path, right? But suddenly something happened. Can you tell us what it was?
Are you talking about the rebellion or? Lyon, okay. So, everyone knows there was a war in heaven, and at least it was told that way. A spiritual administrator of ours was actually our planetary administrator, joined a system-wide rebellion, and he basically took our planet off the rails. We were too young to really understand what was going on. We were still very, we still don't really understand
Mm-hmm.
the whole truth of it all. A lot of people don't. Anyway, it basically destroyed whatever progress had been made in the primitive world. And so we've been under the influence of someone, basically an influencer, who has declared that God isn't real, who says that any attempt to control this world from outside, from the higher levels that we know of that
From
exist,
heaven, from the
is
heavens.
from heaven, has no right to interfere with him. And third, and what really should get everyone on this planet really upset, is that he said that we weren't worth the trouble to actually help us ascend to God, or realize what he
We
said
weren't worth it. We weren't worth it.
worth it, and that it's all a huge hoax. And for us just to do what we want and live how we want, and not, you know, and that is the Lucifer manifesto.
Okay.
Yet we actually have a spirit of God that lives within us that tells us that's a lie. So we have the power to overcome that influence. But the influence is still very strong. And we can recognize all of those things being told to us even today.
Of
All
course,
that
and I think this is the current times, and I'm going to break this down because you just gave me a lot of information, and we have to break it down. But yes, first you said we're evolving, and suddenly there was this rebellion, the Lucifer rebellion, to which our administrator fell into, part of the government, and you can read it. I mean, this is not. I mean, you can read it in the Bible in different texts, and actually you go beyond just the traditional Judeo-Christian writings, but you also see patterns in America, in Asia, in different parts of the world that is not the Middle East, and that's not where Christianity and Judaism kind of originated. And you see the same thing. You see the talk about these ancient beings that were teaching us and that we were going to this, and suddenly this great cataclysm and this loss of knowledge, loss of connection with God, like kind of a fall into the pits of darkness, not hell, darkness. In darkness, I take that as mental and spiritual and different types of darkness. So it's very interesting, but this is it, what you're talking about, and you can read it in the sources that we were talking about in the links that you can find in this podcast. But you can see the history and you can see this evolution and how that was broken. And like you were saying, it's like having maybe somebody that's in his 40s, 50s, 60s can go through trauma and go through this process and say, you're full of crap and I'm not going to take this. But we were infants, we were kids, and suddenly you're a child and you're, you know, poisoned by this, and your mind, you don't understand it, and you fall astray. So that's what happened. And another thing that, like you were saying, is that what this Lucifer manifesto stated is that we have individual liberty, that we do not need to heed to God's will. And this is a very complex topic, and maybe we won't be able to really dive into all of this complexity. But individual liberty is, nowadays something that we see is overpowering us. And is I have the right, and I can impose my right over your right, because that's the thing. When it's not, structured into a final destiny, into final, heavenly or a divine will, each one's purpose, it becomes his own world, and then we become, antagonists against each other. We become egocentric, and we lose all those spiritual values. And I think this is what's happening on Earth right now. We're at this confusion, as we were stating at the beginning of our conversation, and we're in this state of confusion. And we see that these personal liberties is something that, liberty is liberty. No, liberty has responsibilities. If you look at, and we're going to talk about the U.S. and the different elements in the U.S., but liberty is not free, as we've seen, and it takes the brave, and it takes people sacrificing even their lives. And that's what I like about the story of the Star Spangled Banner, where the point of it is what was, if the flag fell down, the British would take over again, and the U.S. would cease to exist. So, it was people that were holding the flag throughout the night, and that's what you hear in the anthem. And it was their dead bodies that were actually raising the flag. And you look at that and you say, yes, liberty is important. It's expensive, but there's a big responsibility what we do with that liberty. And if that liberty, you know, just overpowers the liberty and the rights, and then what you were saying of this Lucifer manifesto, that we're not worthy, it takes somebody to see us not worthy to create this rebellion and see, okay, you're not worthy, so I can really cut you off from all heavenly connections. So I just unpacked a lot of things that you gave me. And what can you say about this, of these thoughts?
Oh, well, at the beginning of all of that, the individual rights that we say we're born with, and the right to life and all that. I think we can see that someone can take your life. So it really isn't something that is always protected from above. So we need to take care of each other as well. We need the government needs to protect the innocent. But all of those other things, we have to have tolerance. We have to listen to each other. We have to be able to discern truth. And also, we should stand for other people's rights as well as our own. We shouldn't force anything on anyone, but we should be conscious of their feelings. And so, right now, I think one of the things that I would love to see is people listening to each other, that they would listen and listen not only to what people are saying, but what are the reasons why they feel that way. And there's wisdom to be gained from listening, as well as speaking. And I think that's one
Surely.
thing that we're missing right now is there's just intolerance for listening to each other. And really, it's so passionate right now that you have to listen to the reasons, or you can't understand why people feel so fiercely that they're trying to preserve certain things. And you have to really believe that they both feel like both
Yeah.
sides feel like they're doing the best for the future and for humanity, and to protect each other. But I think what might be part of our problem is that we have advanced spiritual standards that we're trying to live, ideals that we're trying to live by, but we expect our government to behave like an individual, when truly the state or the government has a different role. Just like when we would serve on a jury, we don't go as an individual, we go as a judicial body, basically. Government behaves not as an individual, but a protector of the whole. So, we need to create laws that protect the individual, but the government has to behave in a different manner. And a lot of people, when they go vote, they look for someone who is the most popular, I hate to say this, but the best looking, or whatever reason, and we're
It
missing
is. It is. We perceive that, and our brain kind of tells us something, but we have to
that.
go beyond that. Yeah.
We need statesmanship schools to ensure that the people that we choose from are the very best representatives of these constitutional standards that we've set. And we're missing out on that right now too.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So this is a good point where we can finish with this topic, which is the current situation on Earth. I mean, we're gonna be looking into the different situations further on. Throughout history, humanity has tried to recreate heaven on earth. Rome sought universal law but fell to pride. Israel aimed for divine governance yet stumbled under human frailty. America reached for liberty and justice but still wrestles with selfishness and division. These experiments show our potential and our struggle to transform divine inspiration into living systems of fairness and light. So let's look at these attempts throughout history. Let's go. We look at the Greeks, and I think that they gave us a very good philosophical basis. And the good thing about Alexander the Great is that he expanded that into the ancient world. And what I really liked about him and why he is the great is that in his process and the way he conquered is that he didn't destroy. He unified. When he defeated an enemy, he incorporated that, and he gave those people that he incorporated their liberty, everything. So from there we can see how this person, really was inclusive. Even though he was a conqueror, he was inclusive, and he brought the Hellenic culture, the Hellenic philosophy to the world. And then we see, from that buildup, because that was like the basis. We see the Roman Empire, and we see how Rome conquers Greece, and how really Rome takes these concepts, because they do take them and then they readapt them. And the democracy from the Greeks and all that. And we see how Rome sets it up, really expands it worldwide. The known world at that time, Europe, Asia, or the Middle East, Africa, and suddenly it turns into an empire. And we see that, in some cases, republics have to turn into empires, or maybe not. But in this case, Rome did, and that's when it was the whole glory. But then it becomes fractured. There's inner fractures that really, even though they were great and it was really impossible to beat them, they failed. They collapsed, and we entered into very dark ages, to which we then, the final pull out of those dark ages was really the French Revolution and the U.S. Revolution. Imagine that whole period of time where we did have advances, but the reinstatement of these ancient government systems, where we have the reflection of heaven. And then what the Enlightenment really brought us, and after the Renaissance, is these ideals of separation of state, of all these structures. So I try to summarize the history of the world really briefly there, but we see a pattern there. And what can you tell us? Because history really fascinates me, and I love diving into this. But what can you tell us about these ancient cultures and modern cultures as well, civilizations?
Well, what you said really struck me about what might have been, the regret that the heavens must feel that we did not succeed in any of those attempts, and what might have been now if we had. And so, breaking it down as far as, Greece, they didn't have a spiritual foundation for their brilliant philosophy. I don't think we've even matched their philosophy yet today. I think that when you look back at the philosophers of those days, we just don't have real thinkers like that anymore. We should aspire to get into philosophy again. And that would be very inspiring for our kids. We always ask, what can we do for the younger generation to get them inspired to live well and look beyond just, starting from square one every generation. We need to inspire them to build upon the shoulders of you know, great thinkers. And so we have to start now. But as far as Rome goes, there were a lot of internal problems that they had.
Mhm.
They said several reasons. They didn't have a spiritual foundation soon enough to support an empire like that. You really have to have a an ideal religion that pulls all of those elements together to be successful. And part of that is, they didn't participate in government. And really, when you look at, let's just use the United States for an example. What percent of people actually participate in government? And really, even at a local level, even going to a school board meeting, or to work, at the local level, and offer to do anything. Very few, I would say less than 10%. And that was a problem with Rome. When you look back, they didn't participate in government. There were the elites and everyone else. If everyone had actually participated, that might have helped that not collapse in time for the religion to take hold and really support it. They also were, pleasure seekers, entertainment seekers. I think we can all relate to that might be something that we're facing as well. So instead of I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't be able to watch TV or the kids shouldn't be able to play games or whatever, but we
But
should all.
yeah, it's a hedonism that taking it to that extreme.
Right. And so if we would spend just even some of that time and put it toward the effort of the whole, the government, the civilization that we're actually creating, it would, it would maybe, I mean, we're looking at our 250th anniversary this year in the United States.
Hmm.
And they're saying that, no republic has ever lasted that long. And will it continue? And so we're actually facing things that are
Yeah, we can see it.
could take us down, really.
Yeah.
And we could be a fail. And I don't think that the heavens want us to fail. They want us to succeed. They want civilization not to crash. They want us to continue to progress. So for the young people, they can't all be taking jobs that are just material jobs just for money.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
they have
and that's what's happening. That's why people are going crazy and really losing themselves in
the
that
kids are in
that spiral.
despair because we're not maybe leading them to show them, there are more important things to think about, and that there isn't doom in front of us, that there is a bright future that we should plan for, that we should make happen, that we should work toward.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then they wouldn't be, we wouldn't have suicides, we wouldn't have kids on drugs. That's another thing. The escapism, I think, is huge. It's a big problem for us. So
definitely. And you were saying, I mean, a lot of stuff. Again, we're going to have to break this down. And you were talking about how, both cases, Rome and Greece, one of the things that they were missing was religion. And let's clarify this in that this isn't that, oh, we have to have like a state religion that, governs everybody. We're not saying that. And let's put this example. We can talk about the nation of Israel, whose foundation has been really a lot, really based on God. I mean, they're the ones that gave us the Bible. Even Christianity, and even in Islam. I mean, the foundations of that's why it's Abraham, the father of all the three religions. So everything takes root in that, and how we can see up. You may be in favor of Israel, you may be against Israel. This is not a political discussion, but you have to state the fact that the nation of Israel, the Israelites, not the Jewish, the Israelites have been a nation since the ancient times, and that glue has been that religion. And I think what I like about Judaism is that it doesn't, give us so many symbols that we have to, that kind of just give us the blueprint, and that's who it kind of gives you that liberty to create the image of God in your mind as however you want to please it. So I really like that about Judaism and how it presents God, and how it was the foundations for the rest of many of the religions. And it's really interesting how you're saying about why these civilizations failed. It was religion, and very particularly, I believe, and there's an episode that I did on specifically on the United States. But one of the things that I mentioned is that I believe the U.S. is a theocracy, not in the classical way that, okay, we have an imam, or we have the pope, or we have whomever. Well, the Pope doesn't have like political. Well, he does have the political power in Rome, but well, if somebody wants to clarify me and give me something, put it in the comments. But, anyways, the point is, what I'm saying about the United States is that it doesn't really it's not one religion. It's not one specific religion, or we're going to use this, Methodist or Catholic or within Christianity or Judaism. It's the acknowledgement of God, and whomever and however you want to view him in that way, but that he is recognizing that we have rights, and there's this universe or this creation of God, and that we within that creation have certain rights which God gave us, and which we, as stewards of those rights, because like we were saying, liberty is not free, stewards of those rights, we have to protect them, and we have to ensure that all those around us are, being safeguarded to protect those rights. Like you were saying, we can see that somebody can kill us. We have the right to live, but somebody can kill us. But we need that structure. So it's really interesting in seeing the U.S. how, the reason for being is for, a government creative of among individuals, because that's what it says. It's not that God is giving you a king because that's who he appointed. It said, you people have to secure these rights. You people have to make sure that your rights are protected. So you have to make sure that you create governments that secure those rights. And also when that government, like you're saying, and we see that suddenly it turns corrupt and it goes into, the decadency, you have the right, not only the right, but the obligation as well to terminate that government and reestablish another government that states those rights. So I know it's a lot to unpack, but that's what the U.S. Stands for, to my view.
I think that's exactly true. And it is a duty that and I think a lot of people might misunderstand that statement to mean that we should establish a different government or constitution if it
Hmm.
fits. No, we rescue the ideal constitutional government
Which is ideal,
from
certainly.
and so really it's not the government that's bad, it's the actors that are performing government duties that have betrayed public trust is what it comes down to, which
Exactly.
is, a punishable offense,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it should be, really,
Yeah.
because it's one down.
And when you come to think of it, is what a big responsibility. I mean, you're the hands of the people. I mean, the people are in your hands. I mean, I can't fathom that. What I don't know, but anyway, so this was an interesting topic. It's more political, but not political, but historical, and stating some of these things, which are very not complex, but we have to understand them in depth to really bring out everything that we can out of them. In our modern myths, we still echo this longing for divine order. Star Wars reveals, through the Republic's ideals of unity and the Jedi's devotion to justice, what they are. While the Empire warns of corruption and imbalance, the Republic brings the best and the ideals of heaven. The Force, that unseen energy binding all life, mirrors the spiritual gravity of the universe, reminding us that our journey toward harmony is both cosmic and deeply personal. So what can you tell us about the model of Star Wars and what that teaches us?
Well, it's interesting that life imitates, what did they say, the story or whatever. I mean, we basically are living
Art
in
projects the reality. Art projects the real world. Yeah.
right. I mean, we're actually living in the middle of a story that's even more interesting than the one that's in Star Wars, and we're living it out. We're acting it out right now. Actually, what we do. But I think for Star Wars, the big lesson is discerning that the establishment, even though it's perceived to be right or acting the will of God on behalf of everyone, isn't always right. That you could recognize the things in the establishment that may be wrong, and then if you become the rebel that fights against it, we don't want to think of ourselves as rebels, but the establishment isn't always correct. And so sometimes it's our duty to stand. But on the other hand, if we're in an established government or whatever, and we are, then if everything is behaving correctly, we should do our best to support that. So really it comes down to discerning your environment, if you're going to be a rebel or not. I mean, and actually doing what you think is right. And of course, we have our indwelling spirit to lead us into that. But discernment is very important for us to see what is right and wrong, and that's part of the confusion we're all going through right now.
And what you're saying, I am the concept came to my mind is the political game, and how as long as there's power, as long as there's money, which is power, basically turns out to that, people get intoxicated and they become destructive. And although they maybe went into government to really help people and serve people, when suddenly they are presented with these incentives, let's call them, it becomes a political game. And now suddenly, instead of looking to fulfill or to secure those rights, let's say, that we were talking about, you suddenly are securing your individual rights, your individual gains, and you stop serving the people and you start serving your interests. And this is not endemic of the US or Mexico or all countries fall to this because it's people that really manage these governments. It's that human factor that is imperfect that should now the question is, can we avoid that? How can we go beyond it? We're talking about Star Wars, and if we mirror that in Star Wars, I see that yeah, the Empire was bad because it was the Siths, but suddenly you see that the Republic wasn't. And if you look at the earlier the Acolyte, you see that there's a fracture there, and that there's even a conflict within the Jedi Order, and in the last trilogy in the saga of the Skywalker saga, the last part, the last three movies, we see that even Yoda and Luke destroy the Jedi tree of knowledge and everything because they see that they were arrogant, and that arrogance made them blind to see the threat. So this is what happens. You become arrogant, you lose sight, you become egotistical. These are a lot of elements that we see in Star Wars that are being played out today.
I think a lot of people are complacent because they're confused.
Complacent.
They don't really know what to do. And honestly, the problem may seem so overwhelming that they don't even know where to start. But everyone can do something. And I would like to say that, I mean, this is an international audience. I would like to say that everyone should fight for their country, their local, wherever they're living, their community. And instead of trying to escape it and to go to someplace else they perceive to be better, stand and fight for making wherever you live better. And
Exactly.
and we want the whole world to succeed. We want the whole world to be prosperous. And one of the things we didn't talk about is that one of the great civilizers is trade, fair trade. And honestly, that's our one of the elements of our best hope right now, to become more universally tolerant of each other, to share cultures, to really enjoy each other's company, and to learn from each other, to in a healthy competitive way raise the standard for
Hmm.
education, for the way we all have the benefits and advantages of civilization. We can help others and raise our own game, and we can do it through these ways without fighting, without conquering each other. We can do it together. And so that is what's really wonderful about it. And this thing with the Star Wars, it should teach us that together we can accomplish anything, especially, it said we should never underestimate the spiritual power of Jesus, Spirit of Truth. He is uniting us. We all say we want unity. We already have spiritual unity through Him because He lives with each one of us. And He's the great, Prince of Peace. We have a great future. We just need to realize it and work toward it, I think, and cooperate.
Yeah, and we were talking about the rebels and how if we come together, like Star Wars, we can overcome everything. And I like that part because like the cosmic citizenship that they present of the galaxy, and that and that's what I really like about that as well. In Star Wars, there's no racism per se. I mean, we have creatures of different types and colors and sizes and whatever, and that's not an issue. It's really, you can see them coming together and uniting under one banner, uniting under one ideal. And this is important. I agree with you, Susan, that you have to be vocal. You can't sometimes, like you're saying, we're complacent, and complacency just serves nobody. It serves the bad guys. Not only the human bad guys, that are attempting evil stuff, but also the other bad guys that are beyond our material plane, that are really also trying to disrupt through rebellion, through all these confusion. But really, the way that we fight them is not being complacent, is really raising up our voices, really putting a stand, making a stand. And that's really important. And that stand doesn't means that in your heart you must take that decision. You must take that you know will, and say, okay, I align myself to what the divine standards are of what this evolution of the world is and what we're trying to make, instead of falling into this concept of the Lucifer Manifesto that says that we are all individual and we can do whatever the hell we want about with our lives without any consequences. And we see this is being played out right now.
And one of the things that came to mind as you were saying that is the problem of censorship, because freedom of speech is elemental to all heavenly ideal governments. If people can speak and be heard, we have the right to make up our own minds about when the Lucifer rebellion happened. They didn't go around and promote their cause. They set up a tent and they promoted their cause, and then Gabriel represented the heavenly ideal in his place, and the heavenly hosts would go back and forth and listen and make up their minds. If we don't invade other people's space, let them speak, let them say, what they have to say and promote their cause, and we're able to do the same without being silenced, and let everyone make up their own minds what is real, what is good, what is right. That is the basic thing, the fundamental thing to keep a good civilization going, a good government going, when the people actually know the truth. And right now, I would say for decades, we've trusted every news source that we've had to have journalistic integrity. We knew the news we could receive was right and we trusted it. But we also have enemies that say, there are countries that will say that they're good, they're patient, they'll play the long game. They will overcome and conquer without firing a shot. That deception is their greatest weapon. Now, so we should be we should be on the
Yeah.
ball about threats. and and I think right now our media is being abused, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, there's influence, dark money influence, that people have become doubtful whether they're even hearing the truth.
And
So
that's
that's
really important. I mean, what you were saying is that we must hear both sides in order to make up our mind. How that's important. You were saying about the freedom of speech and how the war in heaven was played out. It wasn't what we envision of a bloody battle that happens here. I mean, they can't kill themselves, but it is a battle for their personality, their existence,
your
in
soul.
making their minds into following the will of God, or you know doing not doing it. And that's the final decision. So it's really they do cease existence, so they do die in a way. And but it's interesting how that played out. It was more of a debate. It was more of a, what we now see in the political arena. But how important it is, as you were saying, and we see it in that time, that there was deception. There was a camp that deceived and that really manipulated, and we're seeing the same thing right now. And we're not favoring one political side or the other political side. I think that all extremes are bad. But once you really discern, like you're saying, and you're not complacent, and you ask and you question, then you can start to make up your own particular point of view, and really making up your mind, and using that truth. Because many times, like we were saying, if you have the spirit of truth inside of you, that's where you need to look, and that's where it needs to really harmonize inside of you for you to really trust it.
That's really true. And I think that also it's important for us to see the future ideal and to work toward that. Because if we just think now and we don't learn from the past, that's another problem. If we wipe out history, we don't learn from the mistake. And so, you know what they say about that. If you repeat doing the same thing over
If
and
if yeah, if you don't learn your history, you're gonna repeat. Just commented that with my daughter the other day, that she's a real history fan, and she says, "Shoot, I mean, you can understand everything there." Yeah, and that's it. And it's like history is understanding. It's like our an individual will have a psychologist. A psychologist. History is humanity's psychologist. You understand what's really why we're here, why the situation. Yeah.
yeah, I wonder where she got that interest in history from.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, so the future, if we can just visualize this beautiful future and that from the ages of light and life, the epochs that we'll go through, and we can visualize that and know that that is the plan. That's the goal for us. That's what God wants. He wants us to survive and succeed.
Yeah.
That's his will. Then
And
we
become perfect like he is perfect. And how, you know, what contrast with the Lucifer rebellion is like, I want you to be, I value you so much that I want you to be as perfect as I am.
right. And for the Bible people out there, if they go like to the prophets, like for John, the apostle John, he saw a future where there was a holy nation, the whole world. We were a holy nation of people who loved God. That's where we'll end up. And then we should count on that. And that makes you feel good. That makes you think, okay, we're not dying tomorrow. We're going to get through this. This is relax and engage, get involved.
And we're part of that history, you know. Sometimes I see, you know, the battles and, you know, the great wars and World War II and everything, and, you know, the sacrifices that people did. And we are going to be in that part. And maybe we're not going to see, you know, the fruits of everything that is happening, but we contributed to that, right?
Like, as long as
Awesome.
we did contribute. That's that's all we
That's
can
all
do.
we can do. Yes. Well, thank you, Susan. This has been a great talk. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It's really interesting to unpack, you know, on the government part and spiritual perspective. Thank you for all this, and thank you, everybody. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe. If you didn't, you don't do it. You can share it. You can post notifications so you know when we're coming out. So just remember, if you liked it, tell people about it. And once again, Susan, thank you for coming. We'll have to keep on talking about this. And for the rest of you, thank you for watching. I'm Santiago Kneeland. This is the Divine Within. Take care and carpe diem. On the Divine Within podcast, we'll share real conversations to help you find a personal connection with God. My goal is to support your faith, growth, and journey toward discovering the divine within yourself. Join us to deepen your faith and spiritual journey.